There are things you can try that can make people's lives better. Second rule, I'm going to tell you about things. I'm going to tell you about programs. I'm going to tell you about supports and services. And here's my promise. Everything I tell you about today is already available. Nothing I say requires new laws. Nothing I say requires new programs or new funding streams. In fact, it's my hope that you'll realize that the things I'm talking about will save money for boards of DD, for schools, for VR, for all other government agencies, making them more effective and efficient and able to serve more people. So with those two promises in mind, let's get started. Most importantly, I can tell you today is this. You've all been lied to. Repeatedly. No, you've all heard the same lie. I haven't met any of you, but I know you've been lied to. I know you've heard it from parents and teachers and mentors and professionals, and I don't care who you heard it from, it's a lie. No matter what anyone tells you, there really are stupid questions. There's one up on your screen right now. What's your favorite right? I know, it's a funny sentence. It's like a pickup line at an ACLU convention, right? What is your favorite right? But do me a favor and think about it for just 1 second. What is the right that makes you the proudest to be an American, to be an Ohioan? What makes you feel like you are the most part of society? Anybody? I'm not.
Freedom of speech.
Hey, someone answered. Awesome. Freedom of speech. Phenomenal answer. The right to speak and to be part of our society, to associate. The right to, First Amendment also includes the right to worship, religion of your choice. Anyone else? Sir?
Well, a situation that happened earlier in the year that, okay, yeah. Well, most likely we keep having these school tragedies, like school shootings, and the governor in Florida supports these gun laws, and it's ridiculous because he doesn't know what the outcome is, because it's ridiculous because all these children are getting killed because the Florida governor is ridiculous because he's a jerk, for one thing is, and it's enough is enough with these stupid gun laws and supporting the gun situation, that we don't want no more students get killed.
The right to life. The right not to have to worry about dying. I've never heard someone say it in just that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
Freedom of movement.
Absolutely. Freedom of movement. The right to go where you want to go, do what you want to do, see the people you want to see. Awesome one. Anyone else? You know what's really interesting? I'll tell you something that's really interesting. When I talk to audiences and I ask that question, inevitably, the ones who answer the most often are people with disabilities. People without disabilities don't often answer that question. They kind of just look at me like, what do you mean, what's your favorite right? That's why I thank you, sir, for your answer, because, people without disabilities don't really think about their rights. It's like when I was a kid and good job with my dad past the graveyard, and Dad would say, hey, John, how many people in that graveyard are dead? And I'm counting headstones, and Dad goes, all of them. That's what people without disabilities think about their rights. All of them. You know why? Because you have all of them. People without disabilities don't often have to think about their rights because it's something we can all take for granted. People with disabilities, they think about their rights because as we're going to learn today, their rights are at risk and their rights are precious. So think for a moment about those rights we just talked about, that you just heard about, the freedom of speech, the freedom to stay alive, the freedom to move around. Think about some other ones like elections, the freedom to choose our people who are going to govern us. Think about freedom to community integration and to work. What do all these rights have in common? Choice, right? All of our rights come down to choice. Freedom of speech is the right to choose what to say. Freedom of movement is the right to choose where to go. This you talked about, sir, is the freedom to go where we want to go and stay alive. Elections are the freedom to choose the people who will govern us. Every right we have comes down to choice, doesn't it? Without choice, what do our rights matter? There's a quote on your screen from a writer named Jean-Paul Sartre who got it right. He said, I am my choices. Can't not choose. Everything we do is a choice. Everyone in this room is here because of the choices they've made in their lives. I don't mean the choice you come today, although really, good choice. I mean the choices you've made all through your lives. All of them, the good ones, the bad ones. They led up to the people you are. You are doing what you do because of choices you've made all through your life. So choice and the right to make choices is the thing that makes everything else worth it, isn't it? Well, when we make choices, when we have the right to make choices, there's a fancy phrase, another one called self-determination that people use to say. When you hear self-determination, again, it's something people without disabilities don't think of very often because it just means I'm in control of my life. I'm making choices. I'm the captain of my ship, right? I do things. I don't have things done to me. That's what self-determination is. And here's something we know. We know from 40 years of research that when people with disabilities, specifically people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, when they have more choices, when they have more control over their lives, when they have the power to do more things, they have better lives. That is not an opinion. That is a research-found fact. We know this. We know that when people with disabilities make more choices in their life, they have better lives. They are healthier. They are more likely to be independent and work. They are more likely to be healthier and safer. So we know that self-determination is the key to a good life for people with disabilities. Now, let me ask you another stupid question. All those rights we just talked about, including the right to make choices, do they matter at all if you're not allowed to use them? Sir, if you got freedom of speech and I say to you, you can speak, but only when I tell you to and only when I tell you to say. If I tell you, ma'am, I know you got the right to vote, and I will take you to the voting booth so long as you vote for my candidate and my candidate only, otherwise you ain't voting. Ma'am, if I say you got the right to move about, but only where I tell you to go. You can only see the people I tell you to see. Ain't really a right, is it? I mean, when that happens, when you don't have choices, do you have rights? Think about that for a second. If you don't have the right to make choices, you don't have the right really to do anything. And yet that is exactly what we have been doing for over 2,000 years to people with disabilities. Exactly. I am, as you're going to learn, a bit of a geek. I'm a legal geek. I can tell you this. First time the laws were ever really written down in the Western world, not the Eastern world, the Code of Hammurabi goes back tens of thousands of years. I mean, the first time they actually had all the laws together in ancient Rome was a thing called the Justinian Code. I'll tell you how big a geek I am. The emperor who put that together, his name was Justinian. I got a picture of him in my house. Named one of my sons Justin because of it, okay? I am a giant geek, so I know this. I have a copy of the Justinian Code. I have read it. You know what's in the Justinian Code? There is a law, first time those laws are written down, that said this: if a person is feeble-minded, their words, they have to have a curator put over them, make decisions for them. First time laws are written down, we had a law taking away rights. Later on, go through Middle Ages in Britain, our parent country, if you will. We took all our laws from there. They said if you were an idiot or a lunatic, and again, their words, and somehow they decided there was a difference. You had to have a committee put over you to make decisions for you. And we have followed that pattern. Here in America, we call it guardianship. Every state has its own guardianship laws. Ohio has its own guardianship law. In fact, we'll talk about it. You have a pretty good law. But here's how guardianship works, essentially, okay? Guardianship works this way, every state. If a judge decides that you can't make some or all decisions in your life, what the judge does is take those rights away from you and gives them to you. You get to make decisions for you. And here's the deal. Even though almost all state laws, kind of Ohio's, say that we should only take away the rights that people really can't exercise, what we know from studies is that more than 90% of guardianships take away all rights. We call those full guardianships. What happens is, regardless of what you can do, regardless of what you want to do, what they say is you lose all your rights. You get all his rights. Everything. From where you go, what you do, who you see, what you wear, whether you eat breakfast. You got in control of. I know one law professor calls that civil death. Because in a legal sense, you don't exist anymore. Society doesn't recognize you anymore. You don't have a place in society except through you. You can't go places or do things or see people unless you okay it. You can't date or get married. You can't vote unless you okay it. You don't exist anymore. That's what guardianship is. Now understand this. I told you before, I'm not here to say there should never be a guardianship. Here's what I'm concerned about. Here's what I think everybody should be concerned about. I call it overbroad or undue guardianships. That's when you either can make decisions for yourself and don't need a guardian at all, or you only need a guardian for a couple of things and they give all your rights to that. That is a guardianship that is not necessary. It's a guardianship that is too broad. Those overbroad and undue guardianships are pretty scary. Here's what we know. Here's your law in Ohio. For example, Ohio says in your law that a judge, unless that judge takes the time to say which rights you lose all of them. Unless the judge goes through your rights one at a time and says you retain the rights, do this, that, and the other, you lose all of them. Here's your law. It says the guardian can decide what kind of medical and health care you get, what kind of life you lead, what kind of treatment you have, unless the judge takes the time to say otherwise. So here's what we know about that. We know, through, again, decades of studies, that guardians, especially in overbroad and undue guardianships, have incredible power over people's lives, into the most intimate and personal details, like whether they can get married, or whether they can date, or whether they can work, or where they go. That is a scary and serious thing, because just like I said, having control over your life is a good thing. Losing it's a very bad thing. That is not an opinion. That is fact. We've got 40 years of research that say when people with disabilities lose control over their lives, when they lose the right to make choices, their lives get worse. They feel helpless, hopeless, and self-critical. The rest of that sentence is they will not, quote, behave. Because what's the point of behavior? They have lower self-esteem. They have less ability to function. This ain't rocket science. If I spend a bunch of time, man, telling you that you can't do something, you can't make choices, you lose your rights, are you feeling particularly motivated to try? Of course not. They even have a phrase for that. It's called learned helplessness, where you're told constantly you can't do something, so you stop trying to do anything else. Why? Because you look at it like a personal failure. It's my fault I lost my rights. So why should I try to do anything else? That's a problem. That's a problem we've known about for a long time. There's a quote up on your screen. It is 30 years old. It is just as true today as it was when it was said. It's a quote from a congressman named Claude Pepper from Florida. Congressman Pepper chaired, I think, the first investigation into guardianship in the House Committee on Aging. They investigated guardianship, they talked to guardians, talked to people under guardianship, they reviewed state laws, and they came with some recommendations and conclusions. This is one of them. This is pretty much the first thing that they found. Check it out. The typical ward has fewer rights than the typical convicted felon. When you are in an overbroad or undue guardianship, specifically when you are losing rights you don't need to lose, or, there's someone in your life, there's someone outside in your life who gets to decide where you go, what you do, who you see, whether you get health care, and sometimes when you're going to die.